My name is Edith Kimani. Good afternoon. More than 2,000 teachers who have been working in the counties of Mandera, Garissa and Wajir have defied an order by their employer, the Teachers Service Commission, or TSC if you like, to report back to work. Now the teachers say they will not go back to work until their grievances are addressed. The teachers have accompanied Kenya National Union of Teachers Secretary General Wilson Sossion to CID headquarters. Sossion, if you remember, is currently recording a statement after he was summoned for questioning over allegations of incitement to violence and disobeying an ongoing standoff, charges he has denied.
We are telling the country that the teachers of this nation will not suffer when we are watching. We stand behind you. We stand as you demand for your rights. We will stand behind you. Do not feel intimidated. This is only but the beginning.
I want to remove the misconception that Sossion as an individual must be held to account. I want to say it openly, that there are systems and structures in the trade union movement, in the trade union administration. The Secretary General of any trade union is the spokesman of that trade union, and he speaks on behalf of the members within that trade union.
The NAT chairman Muzunzili there offering his backing to the teachers, whose deadline, by the way, lapses tomorrow. The deadline that was, of course, issued by TSC on when they should report back to work. KTN keeping an eye on that story for you. In another developing story, Narok town is abuzz today with hundreds of mourners attending the burial of one of the victims of the chaos that rocked Narok last week. Well, our reporter Kamche Menza has been following that story and is currently attending the burial, and she now joins us via way of telephone for an update. Kamche Menza, the last time I spoke to you, you did say that opposition leader Raila Odinga had arrived at the burial site.
Yes, Edith, how are you?
I'm very well, Kamche. I did say that you said that among the leaders who have arrived in Narok town is opposition leader Raila Odinga.
Yes, Edith, that is what is happening at the moment now. Court leader Raila Odinga has just arrived. And it's not long ago, because even the residents here just arrived a little while ago. In the morning, guys were gathered at the morgue where the body was laid. And a few minutes ago, it's when the convoy started heading to the area, the ceremony site, known as SC Petai area. And what we can see here is that there's a somber mood, and emotions are running high, because you can see residents are actually weeping. They're still grieving of the death of one of their own.
Kamche, you've just preempted the question I was about to ask, because last week we saw very violent scenes coming out of Narok. So are we seeing extra security today in light of this?
Yes, indeed, there is huge security. We've seen police, Land Rovers and trucks on the way as we're heading to the site. But in town, actually, we can say in town there is a calm situation, but at the ceremony site where the Sikona Monset, who passed on like 2 weeks ago, his burial ceremony is being carried out, and right now there is the somber mood. But in town we actually saw a calm situation.
Okay, and when we look at the political aspect of it all, because it did begin as protesters said they wanted to oust their governor, is this still the feeling in Narok County?
We can say it is still the feeling, because after what happened 2 weeks ago, maybe we expected the governor to be here. But at the moment, the governor, Narok County governor, is not here. We only have court leaders and some local leaders and politicians of the area. So we want to believe that the situation is still the same.
All right. What about the senator? Because he was at the heart of the skirmishes last week. Have you spotted him by any chance?
Yeah, we've spotted him. He's in the area also. He's actually gathering together with the other leaders. And we are actually waiting to see maybe if the county governor will show up at any time. But at the moment, he is not around.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Kamche Menza. She is at the burial site where one of the victims of last week's protest in Narok is being laid to rest. And of course, we'll have more details for you in our subsequent bulletins. Back in Nairobi County, the county government is cracking down on businesses that have failed to settle their land rates. Officials of the government descended on the businesses in the Central Business District, catching many business owners unawares.
The provisions of Section 18 and 19 of the Rating Act gives us powers to, first of all, to attach the rent, clamp down the house. If we are not able to recover our rates from there, we can, once we get the necessary approval, we can even auction the property.
Did you know there was such a thing as World Wetlands Day? Well, there is, and today Kenya joins the world in marking that special day, which is a global campaign for conservation of wetlands and the sustainable use of the associated natural resources. According to the Worldwide Fund for Nature, or WWF, between 300 and 400 million people around the world live close to and depend on wetlands. Here in Kenya, a major threat that has been on the rise is the draining of wetlands for commercial development. This includes the construction the construction of tourism facilities or utilization as agricultural land. WWF, together with different stakeholders in the sector, are creating awareness of the importance of wetlands, which are often undervalued. The recently collapsed building in Huruma was said to have been built on a wetland, for example.
Bweka maji na hakuna gharama ifanani na kama ungeenda kununua mafuta ndio upate kunyunyiza maji shamba.
Puyapui swamp is a very important wetland for us because it is the source of the Amala River. The Amala River joins Nyangores River to form the Mara River, which transverses through the Masai Mara Game Reserve. That is a very important touristic facility for the Kenyan economy. Then it goes through the Serengeti to Lake Victoria. So it is important that we conserve the Napuyapui swamp because if we don't do that, the tourist industry in Kenya will definitely be affected.
At the just concluded African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, African leaders agreed to form an African court, arguing that the ICC is an imperialist court. While that argument has sparked a major debate among Africans, one British scholar agrees with the AU. Asha Mwilu reports.
The African leaders resolved to abandon the International Criminal Court and form an African court may have elicited diverse opinions from Africans, but the AU's move has received a boost from an unlikely source.
The claim to be truly international is not really based on the evidence.
British author David Hoyle released his book titled Justice Denied, terming the ICC as a racist court.
Within the founding statute of the International Criminal Court, the Rome Statute, agreed in 1998, 2 articles give the United Nations Security Council special prosecutorial rights. Now the irony is that 3 of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, the United States, China and Russia, are not members of the ICC.
But as David pokes holes into the International Criminal Court, Professor Atuoli Lukoye thinks that by signing the Rome Statute, African leaders made their bed and must lay on it.
Same people who were in government and in opposition at the time and who supported the ICC are still around in government and in opposition. And these cases when they were taken to the ICC, again, it was with full cooperation of the then government and opposition. And up to now, they are still around.
We tried as much as we could with President Kibaki to create a local mechanism to deal with our cases. We tried as hard to persuade our members of parliament to pass a law that would have enabled us to set up a local tribunal.
Part of the newly released book is this argument that the ICC is controlled by its funders.
He who pays the musician, he who pays the piper, will call the tune. 2/3 of the funding for the International Criminal Court comes from Europe, and specifically the European Union member states. So it serves in effect as a de facto servant of the people who fund it.
An argument that appeared to inform the AU's decision to opt for an African court.
Kenya today pledges $1 million to the establishment of the African Court of Justice and Human Rights. I urge you, brothers and sisters, to join me in ensuring that the necessary ratifications are in place and the resulting court is fully owned, financed and driven by Africa.
There are failures that have been mentioned, including what we hear now, that the ICC is being presented as a court of the West against poor African countries and so on and so forth. But those are not subjects that can be fully exhausted or discussed at this point in time, being in the thick of action with ICC.
I don't think that it's really right to go and purport to be speaking on behalf of the people of Kenya without asking the people of Kenya.
And while the president's lobbying for a more local court could not be divorced from the strategy to have William Ruto's case at the ICC dropped, could the opposition leader be warming up as a defense witness for Ruto?
If I am asked to testify, I am willing and ready to testify on behalf of my party, the Orange Democratic Movement. But so far, I have not been requested.
In response, Deputy President William Ruto sent a statement to the newsrooms saying that he welcomes Raila's offer to testify. Ruto, however, says that his conscience remains clear, adding that he believes that he will soon be vindicated as his legal team handles his case on issues of evidence. And as African leaders juggle between the fight for independence and the allegations of impunity, it still remains to be seen whether the AU will successfully advocate for the referral of the pending African cases back to the continent. Asha Mwilu, KTN.
Elsewhere, Makueni Senator Mutula Kilonzo is convinced that finding the exact cause of his father's death will be a tall order. The senator says this is after the family's appointed pathologist questioned the validity of the samples used in the autopsy. In an interview with KTN's Aaron Ocheng, Mutula Jr. revealed that his recent summons to record a statement with the CID was linked to the British pathologist's refusal to append his signature to the autopsy report. Well, here's part one of that interview.
A few days ago, you were at the CID headquarters.
Yes.
You've been summoned to explain a few things in regard to tampering with the materials that were to be used for autopsy.
Yes.
Maybe if you could take us through that.
Yes, my statement to the CID arises from the postmortem. After the postmortem of my late father was done, we agreed, because we had family pathologists, we had the government pathologist, and we had the British pathologist by the name Professor Calder. It is only later, 10 months, November 2013, that we come to learn from Professor Calder that he received his samples on 14th of May, which is equivalent to almost 15 days after the postmortem of my late father, and the samples were unsealed and appeared tampered with. That is the point we started having problems. And in his report, he said that irrespective of the fact that the samples appeared contaminated, in his own words, The cause of my father's death was something he called catastrophic, something that was ingested that caused catastrophic hemorrhage. That's why he had 3 liters of blood in his lung. I pressed his chest, when I found him in his bed, blood oozed from his nose. By the time we were at Leafin Road home, blood was still coming out of his mouth. So therefore, the only downside about what transpired is that the samples were contaminated in such a way that we could not get any other samples to send to Professor Calder to ensure that he conducts an alternative examination and therefore signs his report. So he has issued a report with a caveat that I will not sign this report because the samples that you gave me appeared to have been contaminated and interfered with.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you think or believe probably your late father was assassinated?
I don't believe. It's a fact that my late father was given or ingested or somebody caused his death. It's obvious.
Okay.
Yeah.
And why would someone want Mutula Kilonzo dead?
That's a good question. That's a good question because there's no seat he wanted. There's nobody he owed money. There's nothing that he was looking after other than himself. He was not a threat to anybody, either in leadership or otherwise. So, I mean, that is a question that I'll ask myself for a long time because I do not know the reason why anybody would want Mutula Kilonzo, that nice, legal and clear mind, out of the face of the earth. It's the most unusual thing that I can think of.
Okay, the mystery surrounding the investigations into his death are so complicated. Do you think we'll ever find the truth?
I'm not quite sure because from what I have seen in the post-mortem, I don't think people are keen to know what happened to him. Suffice to say, for my own purposes, and maybe for other family members, I am myself persuaded, convinced 100% that my father died of unnatural causes, and in this case poison, a poisonous substance. That for me would be good enough. As to whether we will find the chain of people who did this, or 1 person, or 3 people, or 5 people, it will not bring my father to life. But there's somebody somewhere who is walking this God's green earth, and that person caused my father's death. And for the life of me, God will pay that person or persons for what I would call absolute cold-blood murder of the late Mutula Kilonzo.
Welcome back to KTN Newsdesk. Let's have a look at the business. In the spirit of a digital government, the Ministry of Mining is automating its systems to boost efficiency. Mining companies will from today be required to make regulatory filings online in a move expected to ease the process of obtaining permits in the country's mining industry. Now, the Mining Ministry issued a Gazette notice on Friday indicating that it had completed the digitization of the mining registry and setting up of an online portal which goes into operation today. The automated system will help the ministry in managing licensing of mineral prospects and collection of royalties in a move aimed at increasing revenue collection. Now, mining companies and mineral right holders will also be required to receive fresh accreditation from the government in order to be granted access to a back end into the system, and what this will do will enable them access the system. The Ministry of Mining has been in a race to change the sector's fortunes as an unset mining industry takes off. Minerals being mined in Kenya include gold, gems, titanium, as well as rare earth metals. There has, however, been speculation that some mining companies have been involved in illegal exports, something the Ministry of Mining is working to crack the whip on. Solar systems vendor M-Copper has announced a 1.1 billion shillings capital injection into the business for expansion. Now, the equity and debt deal is being led by M-Copper's lead investor, LGT Venture, as the company plans to introduce new products, grow its market in East Africa, as well as license its technology to other markets. M-Copper Solar was launched in 2012, offering solar power solutions to households not connected to the national grid. Now, the firm has installed over 150,000 residential solar systems in Kenya, Uganda and Tanzania, and has plans to further expand its distribution and introduce new products to reach an even larger customer base. Buyers pay 3,000 shillings upfront and then settle the balance in daily installments of 50 shillings via M-Pesa, guaranteeing them of grid, light and power. Well, that's where we wrap up this edition of KTN Newsdesk. My name is Edith Kimani. Good afternoon.